Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about Recoup. This might not be the #1 thing on your radar because Recoup used to be a very niche thing. It is used for cost and damage token loopers. It's used for stuff like Bone Shatter, Forbidden Raid, here or there, where it does what it's supposed to do and where it's actually quite powerful. But what about normal builds? Well, Recoup is niche for a reason. So the way it works is, let's for example say you get 10% Recoup from something like this node right here. What happens is you take 1,000 damage from somewhere, and then you recoup 10% of that, which is 100, over 4 seconds, which is 25 per second. Now, life recoup does not scale with, for example, Hearty with increased life regeneration rate. It does, however, scale with life recovery rate, as also seen on, for example, the Watcher's Eye for a Clarity, which gives you mana recovery rate. Because, importantly, there's also mana recoup, which some people are using, right? So, recoup overall is a little bit of a weird one. You might think it's underpowered at times, but whenever it's good, it's actually good. And this league, it got 2 big new tools. Well, actually 3, but we'll get to that. So the first thing I want to shout out is the thing that I'm not using, or did not ended up using, which is Baleful Dominion. If you don't know, this is one of the 4 jewels that vendors into Reclaim Malevolence, which most people are using right now to fix their mana or to use on their Fireball builds. This one's more normal. This one is actually, it's a little bit weird. It fans out into a direction and it doesn't really have a radius, so you can see it fans like into this direction here, and it goes pretty far, and it transforms all these small nodes, and then the notables get an extra effect. It's pretty random, but the important thing is the keystone. Life Recoup also recovers mana, 50% less recovery from Recoup. Now, it is usually harder to get mana recoup than life recoup. Life recoup, there's 3 whole clusters on the passive tree: Infused Flesh, Vampirism, and then also over here, Circle of Life. While as for mana recoup, there's really only Battle Rouse, and then there's this Mastery right here. And even from gear, you will see that, for example, Stasis Prism, which just got buffed, can get 100% life recoup. But mana recoup used to be pretty hard to get. So my first thought was, oh, I'm probably going to use this jewel. And it is definitely an interesting option in the toolbox. But there's something even more interesting, which is this new Abyssal Bloodline. And what it says is Hypnotic Gaze of the Lich. While you have at least 3 Hypnotic Eye jewels socketed, Arcane Surge grants 20% of damage taken recouped as mana to you. Now, the way you scale this is with Arcane Surge effect, and you guys have probably done this before in a Hierophant for Arcane Blessing, because this one gives 20% more damage, and if you, for example, have 100% Arcane Surge effect, that goes to 40% more. There's other payoffs though. Arcane Surge intrinsically gives you 78% cast speed on top of a little bit of mana regen. You get the Hierophant buff, and then you also have Scorn Flux, which says increases to cast speed also apply to movement speed. So this overall gives me 78% movement speed as of right now with all my Arcane Surge effect. And yeah, you can also easily corrupt it because it's a very cheap item. Well, okay, but how would this actually look like on the real build? So for example, this is my current Sparker, and you can see I'm just casting right now, and the recoup gets pretty damn crazy. So you can see my life and my mana pop up after a few casts. Now, the reason this is impressive is because this is an Archmage character. Usually you would have to get a ton of regen on this character. I have none. Like, basically just a Clarity. That's literally it. And this mainly comes from the fact that there's no mana leech on casters. Okay, so how do you self-damage to get the recoup? Scold's Bridle, your skills deal you 400% of mana spent on upfront skills costs as physical damage. That is a lot of damage taken. However, this patch has an alternative because we have vestigial items. Your skills deal you 200% of mana spent. So while you usually have this situation where vestigial items are watered down from the original, this is, funnily enough, a buff. The biggest problem with self-damage is you have this ramp-up time of your recoup, right? It comes up over 4 seconds, and then you have your maximum recoup when you're casting. So you can see there's usually this awkward phase where you're gonna lose a lot of HP, and that doesn't really happen as much on this character, especially because in between I have a cost of damage taken with Immortal Call, which makes me take less physical damage, so you can very much stem the bleeding. Plus, this is only the self-damage. While you're in a map, you're also getting hit by other stuff, and you're not just standing still constantly casting, you're more like moving and then casting, so you can see the sustain is actually hilariously easy. Now, the missing piece of the puzzle here, though, is being a Hierophant and splitting your damage between mana and life, because it works extremely well with Recoup. Recoup. So Mind Over Matter, 40% of damage taken from mana before life. Then you have another 10% from Divine Guidance. And on top of that, you can get 10% from a Clarity. So what that means is you take 100 damage, 60 of that goes to your mana, and 40 of that goes to your life. Easy enough. However, let's say you have 100% mana recoup and 100% life recoup. You only take 40 damage from life, but you still recoup as if you've taken 100 damage. So you're now basically making your life recoup more effective. Same goes for the mana. You only take 60 from mana, but you took 100 damage and you're gonna get back that 100 life. So by shifting this damage, you actually get a ton of value out of your recovery, and that is why I currently only have 50% life recoup, believe it or not, from Infused Flesh and from Vampirism, and this is how it looks like. If you just look at my life bar, my mana bar is obviously a different thing. You have to invest quite a bit more into mana recoup, but you can see with 50 life recoup, I'm chilling. The reason you have to invest more into mana recoup is pretty simple, because you're also paying the mana cost of Archmage. So right now I'm using a Spark of the Nova with Overload Intensity and Archmage, Pinpoint, Greater Spell Echo, and Arcane Surge. And Archmage costs a lot of mana. So you're paying the mana cost, and then you're also taking the damage. So you need considerably more. I'm currently sitting at, I think, around 120 mana recoup. You can go over 100, obviously. And so I have mana recoup here, down here, and most of it comes from Hypnotic Gaze of the Lich. And that is about that. There's also really nice recoup that you can get from a Focused Amulet, from the Veiled Craft that has hybrid mana and recoup. The funniest thing about this Ascendancy, though, is that it also gives mana cost efficiency, which perfectly plays into this whole archetype, because it makes it so your ramp up is not as crazy and your mana cost actually goes down significantly. So you can see right now I'm paying 1,800, and whenever I have Arcane Surge up, I'm only paying 1,000. Now, the way you get this much Arcane Surge effect is the following. First, you have the Sublime Vision, which I'm probably going to have up here, yeah. Auras from your skills have 40% increased effect. Does not matter. Clarity is like, it's neat, don't get me wrong. Like, having a little bit of regen goes a long way, especially at the start. But it gives you, actually you can't even see this when I mouse over. It gives you 80% increased effect of Arcane Surge on you while affected by Clarity, which is a pretty hard stat to get. There is, however, a few easy places to get it. For example, Arcane Capacitor, which gives you up to 50% increased. And then these two small nodes, which give you 20% each. And then you have also 20% from this small node. On top of that, you also have Arcane Heroism, which is on spell large clusters right here, 30% increased effect of Arcane Surge on you. And you have Kurgul's Gaze, which gives you up to 40% increased effect. It does mean, however, you have to have 5 Hypnotic Eye Jewels. And in that case, I decided to just might as well go for Shroud of the Lightless. Since I wanted to go Widow Hail at some point, at first I was going to go for Spark Gloves, which I still can, and put a Cast on Image Taken setup, which we'll go in a second. Yeah, I just went for it, and it turned out pretty damn good. On that note, though, other than sustaining your mana, being out of combat, which is pretty nice, and also it works in no region and no leech maps, and this is actually quite nice. Now, would I want to run a no region map? Not really, because the start is a little bit awkward with absolutely no region, but you can run it. No leech maps are obviously not an issue. It also procs cast when damage taken. Cast when damage taken, you can manipulate to be at a certain level and take a certain amount of damage where you can proc your utility skills regularly. This is not just for damage. In fact, it is actually quite ineffective for damage nowadays. What it is good for is proccing stuff like curses. So for example, I'm using Anathema right here, which gives you your curse limit is equal to your maximum power charges. My maximum and minimum are 5, so I can have up to 5 curses. So what I'm doing in this setup is I have a cast when damage taken with Enfeeble, Conductivity, Elemental Weakness, and then I have another one with Sniper's Mark and Punishment. These in total give me 5 curses, and they are not the kind of curses where you're like, oh, I'm just going to pretend like I have my Arcanist brand and I'm just gonna put some curses on it. They're actually always up, as you can see right here. So I keep casting, and every second cast I do with the spell echo, so it's not perfect, but you can see the Wave of Conviction. That is how often your curses would proc, and they do actually auto-target. On top of that, you can do some other cute stuff like proccing Summon Stone Golem of Safeguarding, which I could not really include at the end, but it is quite nice. It is actually always up, and you have Wave of Conviction for exposure. Now I'm just going to show you a quickie Abyss map right here with some Scarabs, just so you can kind of see, but it is a very straightforward Spark build. So you go into the map, and there's like a 1 second awkward phase at the start, and then you're just kind of going. We have a lot of projectile speed from Widow Hill, so that's nice. The only thing you have to think about is you cannot run no recovery maps, which is already the case for most builds anyways, but this build will literally off itself, right? So it is not a good idea. The damage is very nice. The curses are up basically always, and you can just kind of go through. And you can stand in the middle for the most part. Now, if you're used to stuff like Defiance of Destiny, it is not quite like that. Like, it's not perfect. For example, if you get hit a crap ton, like if you're in the middle of stuff, you can run out, but that is mostly because of my lack of life recoup, not really because of mana currently, because I do only have 50% life recoup, so you're not immune to damage. I will not ever claim that, but it is extremely, extremely nice. And as you can see, my max hit numbers are quite good in the POB. They're around about... Right now, I'm still leveling. I'm level 93 right now. Actually, already 94. Cool. But it will be somewhere around 25k Fizz max hit and around 80. And that is without Immortal Call. So that is quite nice. And yeah, this is just kind of how it looks like. Obviously not hard content, but just so you know. I actually did make the Spark work because I thought Spark would be like the most cookie cutter, and I also love playing Spark. So it would be a really good opportunity. The damage on this build is actually also quite ridiculous. Can hit around about 100 million. Now, this is not with maximum hits. If you're doing this, you're faking. It's not happening. I know most people are doing it because other people are doing it, and it gets kind of like weird. But if you really want a realistic amount, put in like 3 hits, because with maximum hits, you put a little bit too much emphasis on increased skill effect duration, which is usually completely worthless unless you're bossing. Another item I want to highlight right here is Zana's Ingenuity. So I was initially going to craft a subterranean cerulean ring, which cost me quite a bit to make. And then, yeah, somebody told me to go for this ring instead, which I did not know had a mana roll. I only saw the life version, and there was an energy shield version, but there's a version for all 3: mana, energy shield, life. So that is a variable roll. 24% increased mana. You get some resistances, some cast speed, so it's a decent ring. But then you have 2 effects right here on the bottom. You take 100% reduced extra damage from crits, and elemental resistances cannot be penetrated. Is absolutely ridiculous. And if you're wondering, that is also a variable roll. So this ring is very expensive right now because there's a lot of like not so good ones. Enemies cannot leech life from you. Okay, dude. Damage cannot be reflected, unaffected by burning, shock, desecrated. You can see it on PoE Wiki. Either way though, this is one of those rings that is extremely nice if you can actually fit it into your build. I don't know if I'm going to end up doing it, because if I craft a ring, I get another 18% life recoup, which is going to make the build feel even smoother. But it's just something I want you to pay attention to, especially if you're in the deep, because if you haven't seen, the new Cursed Ducats have 2 downsides. One of them is crit, and one of them is pen. So you could perfectly negate that, and then the third one, you just throw something else in. Either way though, really having a lot of fun tinkering around with this build with the right cost and damage taken thresholds. I just wanted to share this idea right here and kind of talk about Recoup, because I think it's getting a lot more competitive nowadays. Vestigial items are awesome. I'm getting to this point of the league where I might be a little bit burned out already, so I don't know if I'm going to put out a full video for this, but either way, I just wanted to throw out the tech. And yeah, thoughts video on the league probably coming soon as well, so look out for that. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and with that being said, does that still have a slogan? See you next time.